This is Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, a new edition dropped this morning, and he joins me now here on Football at 4 on a Monday. What's going on, Moshe?
Michael, how are you? It's a nice, hot, steamy Monday. How's it going?
It is. It doesn't feel like football.
No, it doesn't feel like anything but get your butt inside type of weather.
Sure does. But we're getting close to football. We are almost 1 month away. In fact, we are less than a month now from the start of Eagles training camp, which is kind of getting exciting based on what we watched with the Phillies bullpen this weekend, what we know the Sixers offseason will look like. The Eagles are really, sadly, might be the best hope right now. How sad is that?
Well, that's pretty sad. That's kind of the no other option. But because really after the Phillies are done, then it's just the Eagles, right? So, yeah, that's sad. I mean, look, the Eagles, I believe, will be more competitive on a week-to-week basis than they were last year. Now, you could say, well, they were in a lot of games last year. Yeah, but it was just ugly, horrific games that you could kind of tell as the game went on. Sometimes I thought if football with 5 or 6 quarters, some of those games that the Eagles narrowly lost, they would have lost by 10 or more. It just seemed like they would get worse as the game went on. But I think they'll be more competitive if they're healthier and if their talent develops. But again, what we're talking about in the bigger picture, that I can't answer.
Well, that's it. I was looking at this, a little while ago about the games last year. And yes, they were aesthetically the most unpleasing games I think I've seen in ever watching Eagles football. They were just painful to watch every single week. But you're right. When you look back at those games, how many one-score games did they end up with? Well, all right, they tied Cincinnati. They lost to Baltimore by 2. They lost to New York by 10. They lost to Cleveland by 5. They lost to Seattle by a touchdown. They lost to Arizona by less than a touchdown, and the game on the final. So the week of the season, which obviously they kind of threw, but they had 5 or 6 games that were one-score games last year.
Yes, but conversely, would they win 4 games, right? They won 4 games, and I believe none of those 4 wins came by more than 1 possession either. So that's the NFL for you. You're going to find, go look at the Jets last year. They were an awful team, just a terrible team. But I'm sure you're going to find 6 or 7 games that were 1-possession games.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that they weren't bad, and it doesn't mean that just a few minor tweaks makes them a way better team. You've got to put it all together, and you got to be able to finish games. But, the division is interesting, Mike, at NFC East. And that's, what we've started doing on Inside the Birds is our NFC East preview. We dropped the Dallas first today. And we do this with Greg Cosell, who really brings us inside what the tape says. We don't try to just prognosticate based on what you are on paper or what you've been somewhere else. So Greg does a great job of breaking down the tape. And we started with Dallas, and then we'll go on to Washington. That'll be Thursday morning because on paper, Dallas should have the best offense in the division. Washington should have the best defense in the division. The Giants are an interesting team because I think that they don't have as good of an offense or as good of a defense as either team, but they're probably more in the middle. Like Dallas has had a bad defense last year, and Washington had a bad offense last year. The Giants are just kind of mediocre in both, so they have kind of a less of a bridge to gap there in either side of the ball. And the Eagles are just the biggest question mark. You just have no idea what to expect with them because there's so much newness.
Yeah, and I know in listening to some of the podcasts today with Greg Cosell, as you guys dropped over Inside the Birds, looking at that Cowboys team, like one thing for them is you would think their offense is in pretty good hands. Like if Dak Prescott comes back and that injury doesn't really, hinder him at all, you would think that this is a team that could score a lot of points.
I forgot this. I had to go back and look it up. And I don't want to make too much of this because sometimes you have to throw the ball when you're behind and your defense stinks, and certainly Dallas had to do that. But the more you throw, sometimes the worse off you are, right? You become predictable and you lead to interceptions. But Dak Prescott, through 5 games last year, was averaging 370 passing yards per game with a QB rating of 99 and a 68 completion percentage. He was having one of the greatest stretches of quarterbacking you might see in NFL history. Now, I don't know how sustainable that is because that was just 5 games, and we've seen that, guys fizzle out. But that is an incredible 5-game run when you can average 370 passing yards a game, complete 68% of your passes, and have a 99 quarterback rating.
I thought Prescott last year he almost would have been the MVP conversation had he continued to play the way he was going. I mean, they were just so historically bad. But that's something, Moj, when you look through this division. Well, Dallas, it was a horrible division, but Dallas lost Prescott and had a historically bad defense. You can't really bank on Dallas, I think, being the dumpster fire that they were a year ago.
No, I mean, I think that they've tried to make some improve. Look, I mean, they realized the Mike Nolan experiment did not work out well, so they moved on. They bring in Dan Quinn, who did not work out well as a head coach in Atlanta. I mean, after the Super Bowl run that they had, certainly was supposed to be a defensive mind, and they did not have good defenses there. Now they've tried to draft specifically to help his side of the ball. I think their entire draft was defense, and then they picked an offensive lineman too. They drafted a really talented corner in Kelvin Joseph, who had some off-field issues. Surprisingly, the Cowboys drafted him. But he's supposedly very, very talented. Trayvon Diggs last year, if you watched the first 5 games, you thought this guy was going to be terrible. He really, really improved by the end of the year, though. He got hurt, came back, improved well. They obviously had a Micah Parsons. They've got Jalen Smith. Leighton Vander Esch has the neck issues, but when he's healthy, he's a pretty good player. And they've got some good defensive linemen. They're a little different because they're younger on the D-line. And Randy Gregory, much like Cowboys, has some off-field issues, but when he puts it together, he's a pretty good player. To me, their questions are more in the secondary, but I don't think they're going to be the dumpster fire that they were from the start. I think that they've tried to really cater this defense to be in the division of Dan Quinn.
Oh, I agree with that. And we said over the years, Dallas has had the best talent in the division. How they didn't win the division in those couple years that the Eagles ended up beating them out is beyond me.
Right.
I guess part of that was Garrett was that bad at times as the head coach. And I do think in football, the coach means a lot. I mean, they have their hand on every single play calling, schemes, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought Garrett was one of the worst. But I don't think you can depend on that. But also, Washington seemingly is taking a step towards respectability. Last year, now they get themselves a veteran quarterback that, he might not win the Super Bowl for you, but it doesn't seem that Washington you can count on to be the bringing up the rear anymore.
No, I don't think so. I think that their defense is it's not just the front 7 anymore. They signed William Jackson, a corner from the Bengals, who's a really good player. A lot of people don't realize who he is because he's a Bengal, but good player. Landon Collins will come back, but they had a kid named Cameron Curl, their safety, who played really well, and Greg Cosell has told us he thinks Cameron Curl is better than Landon Collins. They have Kendall Fuller, a decent. I mean, this league is hard to look at the Eagles. It's hard to get one good corner, right? Let alone 2. But Kendall Fuller and William Jackson's a pretty good pairing there. And a lot of people like the kid that they drafted in the first round, Jamin Davis, the linebacker from Tulsa, I think it is. So they are pretty complete from D-line out to secondary. They're pretty good. Here's the key for Washington.
You can make an argument, Geoff, that might be
the best defense in the league.
Defense certainly in the division, possibly in the NFC, and maybe the entire league.
Yeah, you'll get no argument from me. I'm sure there's some pretty good Ds out there, but I'm sure that Washington will be right up there with it. When you can line up 4 first-round picks, right? Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, and Deron Payne. And honestly, I watch them all. I can't find too many weaknesses with any of them. So they're all pretty good. They remind me of what San Francisco did a couple of years ago when they went to, they were bad for a few years. They kept loading up on the defensive line from Eric Armstead to DeForest Buckner to Bosa to there was a Solomon Thomas, and then all of a sudden they've got one of the most ferocious defenses, and they're in the Super Bowl, right? So that kind of reminds me of the trajectory that Washington's on. For me, the key to this team, Mike, is Ryan Fitzpatrick has always been on bad teams that have had to kind of pass a lot, and he's had to make some wild, kind of crazy man quarterback type of plays, like trying to be a Brett Favre when you're really not Brett Favre. And so he's always had good number. He'll have stretches of great games, and then he'll have stretches when he's throwing the ball to the other team. And this is a big if because he's been playing the game so long, if this coaching staff can just convince him that he's got to just manage the game, make your plays, but eliminate your wildness. Don't worry if it's 3rd and 5 and it's not there. We punt and we put our defense on the field and they'll get you the ball back. If you can just play, 25% less animal in you than in the past, we might be able to win this division going away. And we'll see. Because to me, I think that if we can take our Eagles, either fans or media hats off here and say the highlight of this divisional battle will be Dallas's offense versus Washington's defense. That's going to make for some really good primetime television.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know that because Dallas, when they had Prescott last year and they were really cranking offensively, were one of the best in the league. I mean, when they were going to Ben DiNucci and Garrett Gilbert, not so good. Andy Dalton, they were okay, but they were tremendous with Dak Prescott. That's a great point. Like Washington and Dallas, when they match up, you're going to get tremendous offense against tremendous defense. That would highlight. And then the Giants are kind of hanging in this realm of like, I don't know what to think of that team. I mean, I like what they've done with the roster there, but I just can't get behind Jones. But they've got like some intriguing parts about them.
I think you hit it on the head where you look at, if you're Dave Gettleman, who's been maligned and rightfully so, but in general, I like what they've done. I think they've put their quarterback in a situation to continue to develop and have a good year by bringing in a Kenny Galladay. Saquon Barkley is going to come. He's coming back. Hopefully he stays healthy, but that's another weapon. They draft Kadarius Toney. Last year, they added to their offensive line with Matt Pert, who's probably going to start at right tackle. They will get Nate Solder back. He may not even start. I mean, he wasn't that good, but they drafted Andrew Thomas, who had a really rough first half, but a much better second half. Leonard Williams had a breakout year for them. They drafted Olujari, their pass rusher from Georgia.
Right.
They got some good corner in James Bradbury, and linebacker, they're good with Martin. I mean, they have just kind of and Adoree Jackson, who can be beat, but he plays a tough physical man coverage that they're going to want to play more of. So I do agree that the Giants have put themselves in a position to be a better team and really kind of like how he does this, shores up holes with free agents and tries to draft good players. The question now is just, will the coaching and the talent be developed? Will Daniel Jones emerge into a good enough quarterback to make this team a viable contender?
Yeah, and when you look at, I was thinking about this morning. In fact, when I was tweeting out what we're going to talk about today during the show, which is the Eagles' blueprint. It almost feels like they went back to what they know and followed that. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to go from a team that was 4-11-1 to win the Super Bowl, but it felt like because Howie kind of admitted that they thought the window was open, so they did some things that they kind of went off script for that little 2-year window there. And this offseason feels a lot more like Chris Heck from the Sixers would say, on brand, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Definitely on brand. Although, sometimes on brand for them is to, like last year, going out and getting Javon Hargrave, a guy who fits their identity, is young, so he's on his second contract, and you're gonna pay a lot, but he's young, and you're gonna have him grow. They didn't have the funds to do that this year, so there was a little bit of off-brand with all the restructuring and finagling they had to do. So they really could only spend, moderately on the free agents, but they were on brand by filling the holes with guys that can play this game. They may not be great. They're not going to stink. They're going to give you what you need, and hopefully you've drafted well enough so that these guys that you brought in for a year to plug a hole can be, you can move on from them in the offseason, or they play really well and you maybe assign them to an extension. But if not, your drafted talent steps in and performs to that on that rookie contract, so you don't have to overpay.
Yeah, it's like I'm looking back to that 2017. It's like they got LeGarrette Blount. All right, we got Kerryon Johnson. We got Matt McGloin. All right, we'll go get Mullins. We got Chris Long. We'll get Ryan Kerrigan. They got Wisniewski, who was that was a veteran backup guy that gave them versatility. They got the guy from Indianapolis, somebody that knows the coaching staff. There's a lot of similarities of like these under the radar type of things that they just kind of didn't get you excited. They went from 7-9. They had that offseason. You're like, where is this team going? Oh, how about the Super Bowl?
Yeah. How about that? And that would be amazing if it happened again. Probably not. You wonder about they still have some real big question marks, even more so than the 17 team, and obviously that secondary is where it starts on defense. I don't, I like Anthony Harris. Okay, I like the other safety that they have, whose name is it's say it again.
Rodney McLeod.
Rodney McLeod, right? I like that. Assuming he's healthy enough to play, that's good. It's good, but it's not great. Of course, you like Slay. You don't like what they got at second corner, and you're iffy on linebacker. I like Eric Wilson, but he's not like a 3-time Pro Bowl linebacker. So my point is saying is, if you're an upper echelon quarterback in this league, or a pretty good one, and you're going to face a lot of those on a week-to-week basis, you're looking at this Eagles defense thinking, I think I'm going to have a pretty good game as long as, I'm protected and my weapons are doing what they're going to do. In this league, the way we can throw the ball, the way the rules are, I'm going to be able to hit my guys fairly often.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, as we'll continue to look through the divisions and get you ready for training camp, which is now less than a month. Now, I will ask you, this whole NFL is now allowing teams to wear the different uniforms and the different helmets. They're going to kind of go like NBA route. You're going to see different uniforms and all that stuff. But it appears that all the fans who want the Kelly green are not going to get that.
Oh,
at least not next year.
I thought it was going to happen. Not next year, but maybe in the future, right?
At least until 2023, because apparently the Eagles have put in to where – why do they have to put it in so far in advance?
There are some things about the NFL and their rules and regulations that I will never understand, and that the whole uniform thing goes along with it. But I'll also say this, and I don't know. I'd love to see to ask like 100 people how they feel about this. But does wearing the Kelly green, is it that important to people? Like it's just a uniform. I don't understand like the major call. It's not like they even won a Super Bowl in Kelly green either. So that there's that it takes you back to that day. I'm a little perplexed by how many people seem to live their life for this.
I know. Well, I feel like it's like the generation right past us, because I'm not like tied to the Kelly green. I'm 44, so growing up they wore them, but not like in my years. Like they switched over to this midnight green once like the Andy Reid era kind of started, and like so the best times I remember were wearing that. Now, when I was growing up, you had Reggie White, Randall. I was like 12, 13, 14. At that age, like you're kind of growing into your sports fandom, so I don't think you're like attached to. So I don't feel like the attachment to the Kelly green that maybe someone that's like 5 to 10 years older.
Yeah, I can see you grew up, and that's kind of when the NFL was really starting to come into prominence. And there's so much love for those early 90s teams, Buddy, Ryan, of course. Yeah, but it still fascinates me. Buddy's a hero. He never won a playoff game.
Yeah.
I don't get it. If Buddy were coaching these days, people would hate him. People would say, Buddy, you never won a playoff game. You treat offense like it's the kicker. You don't care.
Philadelphia fans are great. And they're also, I always say, they embrace personality over performance.
Yeah,
like
sometimes they do.
Aaron Rowan runs into the fence. He's the best. He stunk.
Bobby Abreu bats .350, but he's boring and not enough.
Yeah, exactly. So Buddy Ryan was boisterous and spoke his mind. Never won a playoff game, but we love him. Andy Reid did nothing but win. Was very boring. Didn't really like him all that much. It's just like this weird dynamic, but. All right, man, I'm looking forward to the start of training camp. Is obviously the Sixers season went off the rails. The Phillies season, that was an embarrassment this weekend.
That was never on the rails.
No.
The Phillies season, no.
No, well, that thing is off the rails at all times. And, like Reese Hoskins, what he says this weekend, like that to me is like the epitome of like, hey, we're okay with this, right? We're okay. Write something good. Can you imagine if like the leader of the Eagles came out and said that?
No, I can't. Plus, I can't imagine a guy coming out and said, "Don't forget to write something good," and the next day makes the game-losing error.
Exactly.
Come on, of all the people.
Apropos.
I mean, I know Alec Bowe made one too, but geez, come on.
All right, check out the new Inside the Birds podcast. Greg Cosell makes an appearance looking at the NFC East. The Dallas Cowboys. We'll do the same leading up to training camp, July 27th, Football at 4. We got plenty more for you here. Andrew's tomorrow. Jeff's back on Wednesday. And Adam will be here on Thursday's edition. All right, man. Take care.
Take care, Mike.